The basic structure, that is the values of the Constitution that form the basis of the Constitution, cannot be abrogated by constitutional amendments.
1973 में केशवानंद भारती के केस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर का आइडिया किया कि पार्लियामेंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अमेंड कर सकती है पर बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर को नहीं. With due respect to the judiciary, I cannot subscribe to this.
The basic structure thing is so important. It's virtually like oxygen to a democracy. You take away basic structure and it's a matter of time before the next parliament takes away basic rights and so on.
What is the basic structure? If, like me, you're not a lawyer, chances are that the only time you've heard about it is when it's been in the news. Like when the vice president had questions about it, or when courts have invoked it while passing important judgments. But if you ask a law student or a lawyer, they'll tell you that the basic structure doctrine is the guiding light of Indian constitutionalism. It can't be found in the text of the Constitution. Instead, the doctrine was coined by the court in what came to be known as the Kesavananda Bharati case in 1973. It answered a constitutional question that had perplexed the court and lawyers and scholars since the early years of the Republic. Put simply, the question was, to what extent could Parliament amend the Constitution? The future of Indian democracy rode on the answer to this question. 2023 marks exactly 50 years since the Kesavananda judgment gave us the concept of the basic structure. Even though we may think of it as a legal concept removed from our everyday life, the doctrine has in fact been fundamental to many aspects of public life in India. It's helped strengthen our democracy and protect our rights.
Kesavananda Bharati in many ways is like the Sholay of, legal judgments in India.
This is Lawrence Liang, Dean at the School of Law, Governance and Citizenship at Ambedkar University, Delhi.
Whether you're a law student or a non-law student, the one case that you would have heard about is Kesavananda Bharati. And we spent a considerable amount of time when we were in law school and studying constitutional law, dealing with this entire question of the relationship between the government and the judiciary and the tussle between them that culminated finally with the Kesavananda case.
In 2017, Lawrence got access to senior advocate Anil Divan's files. Besides being a brilliant legal mind, Divan was known for meticulous record keeping. You'd be amazed at the bound copies of whole newspapers from years ago that can still be found in perfect shape at his office. Lawrence first found court papers related to the many PILs and writ petitions that Divan fought. They formed the basis for the first season of Friend of the Court. Then he was shown the original court papers from the Kesavananda Bharati case, which included play-by-play narrations of the court proceedings.
So when I looked at this material and I held it, my hands started quivering. Because this was really, in some ways, a very uncanny moment where this case that you only knew as text, as law, and as history, you were actually holding it in your hands, right here. And when I was reading especially that file with all of the questions posed by the judges, I found myself transposed to the courtroom, seeing a bespectacled Nani Palkiwala looking at these 13 judges, seeing a Justice Matthew throw a question at him, seeing a Sirvai frown on the side. So in that sense, it was a remarkable moment as a law student and as someone interested in legal history.
These volumes of records are preserved in maroon, grey, and brown hard binding. They lie piled up behind sliding glass cabinets in Divan's basement office in South Delhi. Along with them are old registers filled with Divan's handwritten notes of court proceedings. These records offer a unique window into the hearings and the minds of the lawyers involved, a sense of history as it unfolds in real time. The case itself started out relatively inconspicuously. Kesavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala was one of hundreds of petitions challenging land reform laws. And the monk who lent his name to the petition played only a small role in it. In 1969, Kesavananda Bharati, the head of the Ednir Mutt in Kerala, was on the verge of losing vast tracts of his monastery thanks to a land reform law. he approached the famous constitutional lawyer M.K. Nambiar to fight his case. That's about as far as his involvement went.
In fact, Mr. Andirujana told me that one day His Holiness called him and said, "Why is my name coming every day in the paper? I have not done anything. Every day my name is in the paper." So he got worried. He said, "Why this publicity for me?"
This is Arvind Datar, a senior advocate. The Kesavananda Bharati case created a buzz in the media. It set many records that remain unbroken to this day. It was heard for 66 days between October 1972 and March 1973 by a 13-judge bench. The longest ever hearing before the biggest ever bench. Almost 100 lawyers were involved, India's most prominent and expensive lawyers at the time. Nani Palkhiwala, H.M. Sirvai, Niren De, M.C. Chagla, C.K. Daftari, Anil Divan, Soli Sorabji, T.R. Andhyarujina and their teams of solicitors and juniors shuttled between Bombay and Delhi every week to fight the case. In Delhi, the government's lawyers, led by H.M. Sirvai, camped out at the Ashoka Hotel, and the petitioners' team, led by Nani Palkhiwala, at the Oberoi. The case itself was set in motion by Indira Gandhi's socialist policies. These policies were passed as constitutional amendments which clashed with the nation's founding principles, especially fundamental rights. But the government was adamant that it was a small price to pay for the common good. Ultimately, the court held that there were unspoken limits on Parliament's amending power, that it couldn't tamper with the basic structure of the Constitution. But the case and the build-up to it still remain one of the least understood events of our popular history. We might know the legacy of the case, but what actually happened in court? What happened before it even reached the court? And what did the dramatic political events of the mid-1970s have to do with it? This is Friend of the Court, a podcast series from the Anil Divan Foundation, where we explore historic legal cases. I'm Raghu Karnad, a journalist and a writer. Over the next 7 episodes, we'll reconstruct the case, the events that led up to it, and its legacy. We'll hear from the lawyers who were involved, families of lawyers who are no more, journalists, and constitutional experts. And we'll also take a peek into Anil Divan's files, newspaper archives, and his personal memoirs. Join us in this season of Friend of the Court, Season 2, as we travel back to the early decades of our republic to explore the events in the run-up to India's most important court case and all the events that followed.
The future constitution of India.
All the world admires a deed well done. We can say that we have done this action well.